welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's a famous. It's a quite I'm famous for saying now, which is fantastic. Welcome to today's webinar, Rethink Your World, BIM and Construction in the 21st Century. Today's webinar, you will discover the challenges the construction industry is facing today, discover the impacts of generational change, learn about the challenges of a digital construction industry, discover the opportunities of growth in our industry. Today's session will benefit you by giving you a look into the future, identifying emerging trends and culture, so you can position your career or your business for the future. Today's session will be between 45 to 60 minutes long. I will be hosting along with Rob Charlton. We have a heck of a lot to get through, so with your permission, we're going to move really quickly and take questions towards the end of the session. At the end of today's session as well, I'll provide a link for our next webinar with Joe Harris, Chair of the Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers, and provide a link for the slides as well, along with a full list of questions. A quick bit about introduction about myself. My name is Barie Hasib. I am the Managing Director of BIM Rec. We are an essential recruitment partner for individuals and organisations looking to win with BIM. We're really passionate about helping our candidates and our clients overcome any obstacles throughout your BIM journey. We've helped small startup companies through to large international PLCs, recruit people from across all levels, from modelers through to director level appointments. As far as why BIM Rec are holding these webinars, a question we get asked quite a lot. As you know, BIM is a journey. Some companies and individuals have had great success, whilst others it's been a steep learning curve on them. Our goal, with the help of our expert speakers, is simply to help you win with BIM. With that said, I'm very proud to announce we have Rob Charlton. Rob is the CEO of Space Group and the founder of the BIM Show Live. Rob is presenting today on Rethink Your World, BIM and the construction industry in the 21st century. With that said, I would now like to unmute Rob and make Rob the presenter. There you go, Rob. You should be able to take control of the screen now.
Does everyone see my screen? That's good.
Bear with me. Yeah, you're up there now.
Okay. Good afternoon. Was it good afternoon, good morning, good evening that you said there, Barry? I quite like that. That was really good.
We'll cater for everyone across the world.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Hello everyone. It was a good introduction from Barry, and I think it's very relevant that Barry said it's a journey, and we're very much still on our journey, still learning. It's a journey, but it's also an opportunity. It's a great one. Our journey actually, specifically on this, started back in 2000, and we're still very much on it, and still learning every day. Just to give a bit of background about me, a bit of background about Space Group. I am Chief Executive of Space Group, which is a lovely fancy title, but the upshot is we're a disruptive organisation that are really just trying to improve the built environment and construction, in effect. I'm an architect by profession, studied in the UK. Majority of our businesses currently are in the UK, but the great thing about digital business is that it can go global, and we can service markets all around the world. So currently, some of our brands are now pushing into other countries. So, for example, BIM Stores now in Australia. Next month launches in America. We're going to do more in Europe. So some of our brands that you may be familiar with or may not. The first business we started out with 60 years ago was Space Architects as a traditional architectural practice, but we evolved from there into BIM Technologies, BIM Store, BIM Campus. We run BIM Crunch. As Barry said, we founded BIM Show Live. We also have various other businesses. So we have Volula, which creates off-site buildings such as spacesuits. So we've kind of taken this whole digital thing and delivered a whole range of offers and processes that go around that. And really the reason and the fundamental background, everything we do is on the basis that actually construction hasn't been great, and there's definitely room for improvement, and we don't necessarily deliver the best service to our customers. So that's what we've very much embraced as a business. So now we're trying to change the slide. There you go. So yeah, so that's what I was saying there. We're about making buildings better. Now, how we do that is irrelevant, or can be very different ways, but that's what we're trying to do, and on the basis that buildings aren't great. If you ever want to follow me and hear me rant on about various things, if you go to the Space Group website, I do write a blog that is a bit more detail on all the things I've got to say today. You'll notice there's a very similar theme on many things. You can follow me on Twitter, Space Group Rob. So the story so far, not so in relation to us, but the story so far in relation to construction, which is an interesting story. I just picked housing as an example, and this is a document that I read probably a month ago. It came out, and it was from the really good book, but it was all about construction and how housing had developed in the UK. If you see this slide, the reality is, and that was really interesting, it's a very thick book, but the reality is, certainly in the construction techniques, hasn't changed a great deal for certainly 100 years. We're still building houses, in particular out of brick and using the same materials. The styles changed, but when you read this book, it was very clear that the detail, they did focus very much on the detail, but the actual change was minuscule, in that it was all about maybe the eaves detail and how to put, but fundamental change was small. That's one part of the sector, but it kind of goes across other parts. You know, more traditional construction has moved forward slightly, but still we are way behind other industries in the progress they have made, and that's kind of a challenge, but also an opportunity, which is why we think we have to rethink. And often I talk to people, and what we do as an industry, and generally, particularly in the UK, we're quite conservative in the UK, and we do things by small change rather than big rethinking ideas. And in our industry in the UK, we're trying to change things, but without major change of thought. We're just tickling at the edges. And I don't think the way construction is now, unless we fundamentally rethink everything we do, and nothing being as standard and as expected, we won't get the kind of outcomes that we need for the new century which we're in at the moment. So I put this up. It may be that if this is going around the world, nobody has any idea what this is, but the people that are slightly older in the UK will recognise this as the Austin Princess, which was British Leyland. It was their flagship car in the 1970s, and it's awful. It was awful. It was a dreadful car. It's interesting, if you don't see any of them on the road anymore, that's probably namely because they were rubbish. And I think I made this statement to somebody yesterday that the UK construction industry, and generally the construction around the world, has a similar issue. It actually thinks it's quite good, but the reality is, as much as the UK car industry thought this was a great product, the reality was it was head in the sand, and actually it was pretty poor. What actually happened was, not long after this, a lot of our friends from around the world, particularly the Japanese, came into the UK with a fantastic product and fantastic processes and procedures, and basically delivered a product which the industry was far more interested in, and the market was far more interested in, and basically British Leyland didn't last much longer. It doesn't exist anymore. And I'm talking to you today from Sunderland in the north, from Newcastle, not far from Sunderland in the northeast of England. And Nissan now is a huge plant and one of the most productive plants in the whole of Europe, if not the world, for Nissan. So what the point is here is that sometimes you can have blind ignorance that whilst you think things are great, they're not so good. And construction, I think, has to realise that its customers are not fantastically happy with what we've got, and it's only going to take someone to disrupt the market that is going to remove the market for a lot of other people. Why do we need to change? This is a very well-used slide. I think that one of the big reasons for why is that we keep getting things wrong in our industry, and actually there's a big thought process that says we quite like getting things wrong. Getting things wrong is quite good because a lot of people make money out of it. The other good thing about getting things wrong is that people can demonstrate their prowess of solving problems. So those three people on that bridge there are saying, look, I'm really clever, this is how I'm going to fix it. So there's not really sometimes you could argue there's not an incentive to get things right first time, because actually there's a lot of money to be made from mistakes. So that has to change. The other thing is that there's something strange happening in the environment, and it was just the global environment report that came out was starting to say some very alarming things about the environment. There's certainly, spending my time in the UK like I do, we are getting some very strange things happening with the weather and the environment. This is not untypical, where we get cars having to drive down streets that are flooded increasingly regularly. So there's something not quite in the environment right about energy, about what we're doing, how we're looking after our environment, that is concerning. So it might be time for change. And then the other side of it is around waste. If you go on any building site, you will see huge amounts of waste. And there's an argument to be said that actually waste can be good, because that's money. There's prelims on all of that waste. Someone's paying for it. But it makes our products, as in buildings, very expensive and not the best value. And also got emerging young people into our industry who actually no longer accept waste. So if you look at this picture here, there's a lot of waste here. Not only is there the timber, someone's got to pay for that timber ultimately. You've then got to pay for the skip that it's in, so that's more money. And then you've got to pay for the things that's in the skip to be removed. So there's 3 levels. And even the worst level, in some countries, you have to pay tax on the landfill. So there's cost on top of cost on top of cost. It would be far better if we managed our resources better. I can imagine if you look at any automotive plant or an aerospace plant, the amount of waste going at the back end of there will be far less than it would be on a housing estate being developed in the UK at the moment. So it's a big area, and again, these young generations aren't particularly happy about that. And I was talking, because we do a lot with BIM store, I know a lot of manufacturers very well, and one of them said to me, very interesting, that one of the big challenges that manufacturers have is that they have perfectly good materials going straight out the factory into a skip, because things aren't being managed right, resourcing isn't being managed right, and there's no incentive to reduce those kind of waste costs. So that's another area to look at. The other thing we've got to consider is buildings have become far more technical and challenging and complex. So this is a Google data center, and the data center will have 60 systems alone on the M&E side, the equivalent number of backups, there's 120 systems or whatever it is to be coordinated. So we need some support to help us do that. The human brain can no longer achieve that amount of coordination without some support from a computer or various systems. This is an interesting slide, and it's particularly focused on the UK market. And having just gone through a general election in the UK, one of the things that there's been lots of things discussed in our in the political campaigns about welfare and all sorts of big, should we be in Europe, should we not be in Europe. I think the fundamental issue for us as a country is around this slide, because all of these things are very straightforward in that they've got to be paid for. Unless we are productive as a country, we can't pay for all these things. And actually, the UK is currently 13th in the world for productivity per head. So that is terrifying in that we are well down the level of productivity against our competitors. So that's an area that needs to be addressed. So using the digital side of things for businesses and for countries to be more productive is an important part of the future, especially when skills are reducing. If anybody's heard me talk before, they'll know that I have a real interest around generations. And at the moment, the emerging and the dynamic generation is Generation Y. The baby boom generation, or people generally around 50 plus, are kind of traditionally held a lot of power. We've got Generation X, where I sit as Generation X in that area. But the people of Generation Y think very, very differently to those in Generation X or Generation or baby boomers. And the future of construction is around how these people think, not how a baby boomer might think the industry should be. And I think my classic baby boomer, and I might be a bit unfair, but I would say is Alex Ferguson, is the classic baby boomer, banging the table, going red in the face. And there is a bit of a culture in construction, certainly in the UK, that is what construction's about. The reality is Generation Y doesn't like the idea of that. They have a very different view of things, that the environment is very important to them. They need to understand things, they challenge. Work-life balance and well-being is far more important to them. And what we found as a business that we've had to really understand how they think and what they need. There's no point in us running our business how a baby boomer would run it, or Generation X. I mean, the majority of our business, or emerging part of our business, is Generation Y. So we've had to change a lot of our thinking around flexibility, agile working, and all those sorts of things that Generation Y need. And again, that's the thing that I think construction needs to move to allow some of those cultural changes. Not least, one of the big things in construction is the amount of women in our industry. We have got a very defined culture in construction, and a lot of that is possibly around the male-dominated alpha male type approach, very aggressive. I believe women think differently to men, and if we had a more balanced approach, I think the culture would change fundamentally. So we've got all these things to consider in the industry. So I've touched upon these. These are the kind of generations you can kind of work out where you sit in those. Just to put that into context, the same three layers here are in relation to some of the companies, and these are the challenges that we have. IBM are very much a baby boom business, have been around a long time, and they're very proud of that. But one of the challenges IBM has is that maybe one of their strengths, but also one of their weaknesses, that they're a business that's big, isn't nimble, and needs to move fast, but struggles to move fast. The Generation X businesses, Amazon and Apple, interesting, Apple's a bit of an unusual one, because Apple, you could argue, is actually a baby boom business, because Steve Jobs was a baby boomer. But it was his second coming that made the difference, and he is kind of at a genius level. And Amazon, surprisingly, you might not realise that Amazon is a Generation X business. Jeff Bezos was very much a Generation X kind person. He's certainly, if you've read the book on Amazon, it's quite an aggressive style he has. But they're kind of traditional business. Amazon's been around 25 years. I think what the interesting thing is the two at the bottom, Google and Facebook, new emerging businesses that arrive are very quick. I mean, Google, 15 years, it's just celebrated. These are brand new businesses, one of the biggest businesses in the world. That's how things are moving so fast. The whole world's changing fast. Both those businesses are operated by certainly very young Generation X's or Generation Y, so they think very differently, they have different approaches. And that's something that construction has to embrace, and our emerging businesses are those Generation type Y businesses. So the industry needs to adapt with that. So ultimately, I think the fundamental, and rethinking your world, we're in the middle of a digital revolution, and that's, certainly the whole world's in the middle of a digital revolution, digital switchover. Construction is probably well down the line and late to the party of that digital switchover. And I say our digital switchover probably, whilst we've always used AutoCAD, our digital switchover started in 2000, and that was on the basis of me seeing my first copy of Revit slightly before Autodesk bought it. And as someone who's an architect and has used drawings in his career, when I saw the parametric aspects of Revit in 2000, I knew that was the future, because that gave me plans, sections, elevations, all happening at the same time. I will be honest, it took us till 2005. We continued to invest for 5 years, but it took us 5 years from that point of seeing the first piece of software to delivering our first building. But we were absolutely adamant that was the future. And then from then, we've just continued to build on that digital revolution going forward. So this isn't me, but it looks a bit like me. I've got a bit of that grey hair, which kind of gives me the people in these, when I'm talking about digital things, listen a bit more when you've got a bit grey hair. One of the challenges, some of the really bright people in our business are so young, so I can now bring the experience, they bring the talent. For my career, whilst I might look a lot older, I'm only 45 years of age, so it means I've been in the industry 25 years, and in such a short space of time, I was trained on one of these drafting machines, and I used rotring pens, and that's not that long ago, 25 years now. In most architectural practices and design practices, you won't see a drawing board. Certainly in our business, it's not a drawing board to be seen anywhere. So that's the pace of change, and if there was a curve put on it, whilst it's been over 25 years, certainly it has accelerated hugely in the last 10 years. I've seen huge change and adoption. So it is a digital revolution, and I saw one of the questions was, how would you describe BIM? Interestingly enough, one of the things I will say is that I'm not a, whilst the term BIM was great from a marketing point of view and helped us deliver it, it's probably done its thing for us now, and I think BIM was a great marketing tool, but certainly what the industry needs is something far wider than BIM. So I call it digital construction, so we don't kind of get focused, and people don't think that BIM's all about just design software. So basically, what we're saying is that this is a move from VHS to Netflix. That's what BIM is about. For those that remember VHS, it was all about big cassettes, and maybe on a Saturday night you would go down to the video store, hire a movie, and then take it into and watch it. The beauty now is that on Netflix, anywhere in the world, you can download any film at any time. And this is not a revolution that's coming. This is here now, and Netflix for construction effectively is available now. All that's stopping us is the take-up of it. The technology is all there now. It's just we aren't moving fast enough. But what I will say is there's no doubt it is going. It's not a case. There was a time when I've had these conversations and maybe questioned if it was ever going to happen. Now, it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. And month on month, I get, really surprised by the pace of change that we have. So what it's all about is that move from paper to data. So in the past, the power was in the paper. Actually now, data is far more intelligent than paper, and for me, paper is just a report. So drawings are no longer drawings, they are a report of what that model is doing at that time. And as a business, from our point of view, we challenge everyone to do, if there's paper there, what's it there for, why do you need it, and is there other ways around it? Because data has far greater value. Paper information is static, data is constantly moving. So really what BIM, if you understand, it's digital construction, and it is that move from paper, two-dimensional information, to data. And once you've got that data, there's so many things you can do with it. So now some of the challenges we've got, there's the ideas, and that's what it's all about. So a few of the challenges we've got, I'll start with it. It'll be in no particular order. Problems with professions. As I say, I kind of declare an interest in that I am an architect, so I am part of the Royal Institute of British Architects. But unfortunately, the challenge they've got is that I'm not sure they necessarily represent the industry that we're in at the moment. The history of the professions in the UK goes back several hundred years, and I'll use this example. This is St Paul's Cathedral, designed by probably the most famous English architect. But the really interesting fact when you research a little bit further is that Christopher Wren wasn't actually an architect. He was a mathematician, and in those times, gentlemen would tinker on with buildings and would design such buildings as St Paul's Cathedral. The other interesting thing is that when he designed this, and he wasn't, he was a mathematician, so he was jack of all trades. He was the designer, he was the quantity surveyor, he was the M&E engineer, he was the planning supervisor, everything. You name it, he was everything. The nearest term at the time was master builder, and actually a great success. When one organisation, one individual is responsible for everything, it all really works, and this building is testament to that, still standing today, and it is one of the most iconic buildings in London. So he got it right. Then someone came up with the idea what we need is an institute, and along with several others, I think the engineers were before architects, but we created the Royal Institute of British Architects, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, we created the Royal Institute of the Institute of Chartered Engineers, Civil Engineers, the whole range, and for all the right reasons, developed centres of excellence for people. That's going to go back on that. What's happened though is that that's made our industry very, very vertical, and the problem there is that everyone then looks after their own challenges rather than looking on the shared project objective, which would be about designing a fantastic building. We've become, in the nicest possible way in our industry, quite selfish in that we look after ourselves. So if I'm an architect and I've got an appointment and I have to do X, Y, and Z, my priority is that I deliver my responsibilities rather than what's best for the team. So we've become a team of individuals, and we all know the best football teams are the ones that aren't a team of individuals, are the ones that operate as a team, and that's one of the challenges for construction. There's been a very good report done by Paul Morell in the UK about the future of the professions, and I think there's a fundamental change that needs to happen there. And Paul Morell's, basically the upshot of what Paul Morell's saying is that if the professions don't change in 10 years, they won't exist. So there's still a role for the professions, but I do fundamentally believe that the elitism that's generated from professions does cause a tension in the whole building process. Just to look at some of the other industries, what they're doing. This is the kind of thing that the other professions are achieving. So this is the Land Rover. You may have seen this on billboards around the world over the years. This is basically showing progress over 50 years for the Land Rover. The one on the left was designed in 47. The one on the right is the same product but with 50 years development and has progressed significantly. You can see the stark difference between what we achieve and what other industries achieved. So that's the point. So what I'm saying is that 21st century construction is bigger than BIM. So whilst BIM has been a great way to get the ball rolling, BIM we perceive as, a lot of people, I still hear people say, oh yeah, BIM, I do a bit of Revit, or I do a bit of, whatever it is. BIM is that whole broader emphasis of what the industry needs to do. So there's a lovely model there in 3D from one of our projects, but that's just part of the process. The whole digital side of coordinate information and data that comes out is one part of it. The whole rethinking construction and rethinking your world is about culture. It is fundamentally broader than that. So when I talk about rethink culture, what I'm saying is that construction has a reputation. I'm sure some of us have actually even bumped into this gentleman. It's the hard hat culture. It's the trowel. It's the leery male shouting and bawling at passers-by, etc. Now I know it is a stereotype, and I know there are many others that are far more professional in this. But unfortunately, if your child is going to go into construction and you want your daughter to be in the construction industry, you think of plasterers, you think of bricklayers, and you wouldn't want your daughter or your son to go into that industry. So we must change professions, the perception of our industry, and that's around culture. The industry that I work in certainly isn't around this. The hard hat is long gone. It's a stereotype, and it's all about digital and it's iPads, and we really can excite young people. So we do a lot of work with young people because we realise the future of our industry and selfishly the future of our business is in how we encourage young people in. So we work with schools and colleges and universities, and we show them it is about iPads, it is about construction, it is about, we use Oculus Rift, augmented reality. They can really understand that, and actually they see that as construction, and it excites them. Whereas the idea of being a plumber may not excite, it might excite some, but doesn't excite all. And it was great. I went to the UTC recently at Lancashire University Technical College, and it was great. It's about construction engineering, and the building is fantastic. But the real disappointment for me was when you went down to the workshops at the back. So there was this fantastic, really cool Google type environment that would really excite young people. And then you went down to the workshops at the back. There was plastering bays and plumbing examples. Now, that isn't going to. A lot of the kids, there's more to construction than that. We all know that. So we need to fundamentally change the culture. And as I said earlier, one of the big challenges for our industry is how we balance the industry a bit more and how we get more women in. And I think that will have a fundamental difference in culture. And there's some great writings out there now. Sheryl Sandberg's written a great book. She's the Chief Operations Officer at Facebook. She's written a great book called Lean In. The people at KPMG have written a great report about why women leave the various professions and the kind of disappear out of various professions, and what do we need to do. And it's too simple to say, well, women go off and have children, they don't come back. That's not how it is. There's something else happens, and there's lots of reasons for it. And probably that's another seminar on its own right. But it was interesting. I was at an architect's degree show last night, and I walked around, and there was, in the undergraduate, there was 60 students, and of those 60, it was a comfortable 50-50 male-female split between who was there. Now, I look at any business in 5 years' time where that won't be a 50-50 split. It'll have fallen significantly. So So I think there's work to do there in the industry to change that, to get that balance, and it's an important part of changing the culture of how we get more balanced boardrooms, how we get more balanced project teams. All those things have to be considered, and I do believe just because women have different cultures, they won't take the alpha male approach, they will have different approaches. I think that will fundamentally change behaviours, and it actually will even change the behaviour of some of the men in the project team. So I think that's something to change from a culture. We rethink process. Going back again, look at the UK. When I started out, it was all around the RIBA plan of work, and the RIBA plan of work is the clues in the title. It was the Royal Institute of British Architects plan of work. So when you looked at it, this is the one that goes A, B, C, D, E. So it goes through that process. A lot of us have grown up with that. But if you look at it, the balance was all around design. There was a little bit at the front for briefing, and there was a little bit at the back end about feedback, but it was tiny. But obviously, if it's the architect's plan of work, it's going to have a focus on the architectural side of the design. The reality is, of any project that that involves buildings, there's a four-stage process, and to get the best value, you have to understand and embrace all four. And we've picked this four-stage approach up and run with it over the last few years. You've got the define and validate stage, so we have to understand the brief. We have to use technology to prove it. And before we start designing, the clients have got to be very clear about what they want to achieve. So not only saying, I want my building for £10, we need to know how many miles per gallon you want to do for that £10. We need to know the energy performance. So we need to really, we can test that without getting into expensive design stages. There's no magic answers in the construction, as we know. So we know what, square meters cost to build roughly in certain areas. We know what the energy performance is. We know what the life cycle is. So should we have those discussions early, and the briefing stage should be clear to say, look, I've got that kind of money, that's what I can afford, and this is how long I want it to last. And we can tell the client, if you want to spend that, do you want to spend a bit more and get it last longer, or do you want it to spend a bit less and it'll not last as long, or do you want to spend a bit more and have your energy bills down? They're the kind of early conversations we can have, and digital construction allows us to take data, analyse that, and use it. That's the first stage. The second stage is design and prototype, and that's the bit that everyone thinks BIM's about. That's about Revit and Navisworks, and that's coordinating, getting all those things right. So it's testing. Very cheap to get to make mistakes on a computer. We've then ditched the term construction deliberately because it's more about manufacture and assemble. Let's take that risk out. Let's talk more about doing things off-site, and the small part of what we do is on-site if we can. And then last but not least, operate and maintain, and that's where the real value of digital construction is. Whilst it says it's these are equal stages, the reality is that is 60 times longer, and that's what we need to understand. It's a V diagram because we want to get feedback, so the idea of when we finish building it, we go back and test it. Did we build it like we designed it? We tend not to do that in construction. And then very importantly, when we start operating it, and we said it had to be 35 miles per gallon, did we achieve 35 miles per gallon? So we feed that back. Continuously improvement loop, so we can feed that back in, so the next time we want to define and validate a project, we've got live data, and data allows us to do that. The key thing with all of this, I'm a great advocate, where all of our problems stem from is that we don't finish a stage before we start another, and the bottom of the V is where construction has most of its challenges, where we have procurement and all those issues, and I'm not purporting to have all the answers to that, but the more completion of key stages before we start the next one, the better it is. I will say a lot of the things that we now see are construction are actually design aspects, so constructors are designers, so how to use a crane, where cranes are used, programming, that is part of the design. That's not construction or manufacture and assemble, that is design. So big parts of the design process are delivered by contractors, but they are actually designers, and it's getting that clarity of what everyone is doing. So I'm less interested in what hat you wear, it's about what function you do. And then you can see how that aligns to the current digital plan of work at the bottom, the new standard. What I will say with the RIBA, they've done very well to be the first out of the blocks to align their new plan of work into digital into that, and we've got a great alignment. So we have to fundamentally rethink how we develop buildings, and we have to think broader. We have to consider the briefing stage, not just the design and build, and we've got to also consider the maintenance stage. And just to give it a small example, this is a tiny project that we've been hugely involved in, the houses. But the idea, this is taking all of that process stage. This is a zero energy house. It costs £80,000. It's zero carbon and has no bills at all. And that is done through process, through standardization, really high quality, and it just proves what can be done. And I know it's a house, it's the simplest form, but we put our money where our mouth was. We're now rolling this out, and we'll be doing several hundred of these over the next year or so, and growing that. But it was to solve fuel poverty. And it just proves the construction industry thinks about what it does and challenges. We can actually really change the world. I think I've done it yet. I've done the professions. And then collaboration. We need to rethink collaboration. Kind of touched on this before. I wonder how many of us have stood for that cheesy shot on projects where it's the team. Something usually at the start of the project where we all get together and we all start off, we're all going to collaborate. It's a load of rubbish because it doesn't happen. As I say, we are quite a selfish industry. You need, whilst collaboration is one of my favourite words, it's so misused, and you have to really understand what it means. Collaboration means a shared project objective, and that's the problem on projects, is that across all of those people that are on that slide there, some are engineers, some are architects, some are constructors, some are subcontractors, and whilst they're all smiling there, the reality is, at a work level, maybe at a personal level when they're in the bar that they get on, but actually at a work level they generally hate each other. The architect hates the QS hates the engineer hates the architect, the subcontractor hates the main contractor hates the whole design team. That's the reality. And what we've lost sight of is the shared project objective, and that's something the professionals need to start breaking down. But when we're working on projects, we need to have mechanisms that allow us to focus on the shared project objective. And if the shared project objective is delivering a fantastic school, say, for young people to learn in, that's what we're trying to achieve. And we need to understand that and buy into that and have the whole mechanism that we've got to deliver that. And it's interesting, Space House, which was the house, the previous house I showed you that we delivered for £80,000, that bringing together was just too difficult. We managed to do all of the design work and the testing. So we ended up designing it, delivering it, and owning it effectively. So we were client, developer, builder, and architect. And that, to prove a point, that was the only way we could deliver it. If we brought in others, I think it would have been more difficult, and we wouldn't have been able to deliver some of those things. That's not to say we can't do it in the future, but the best way to achieve a shared project objective, if you want to do it quickly, is for you to be in charge of everything. So I guess with Space House, we were the equivalent of Sir Christopher Wren. What we need to do is, clearly we can't all be businesses that do that yet. I know there are some businesses doing that, but they're the challenges that we have to face. I'm not quite sure what the answers are, but they're challenges to be faced going forward. And then Rethink Information, finally. This is inside Space House, interesting enough. But the reason I put this up is that buildings are going to give us lots and lots of information. So in Space House that you get included, buried in the Wi-Fi of this building, is Nest, which is from Google, and that's gathering stacks of data about this house, feeding it back, and the tenants give us permission to test that. So this is one tiny example of how buildings are giving us so much data, so we can make our buildings, not only how we design them more efficient, but how we operate them, and then we should feed that data back into the operational process. So it's like a Formula One car, that they optimize its performance. So it's so easy now to grab data. So to put Nest into here, Space House comes with its very own app. The end user can monitor how much energy they're using. They can decide when the sun's shining to put the washing in the washing machine, because that's when energy is free. So it's allowing them to rethink how buildings work, and I think that's going to be a very different way. It's not just data in design, it's data in operation, and the reality of that coming to the masses at low cost is not far away. And in Space House, all they had to do was buy Nest, and there's another box of tricks we've got on there that we attach in, links to the Wi-Fi system, and then that whole house is effectively monitored and wired. Lights can turn up and down. We can monitor every cooker, appliance, everything about how we're performing. So we're going to have more and more data, probably in the years, in not too distant future, we're going to have more data than we know what to do with. It's how we analyse that and how we take that to improve the future buildings. So hopefully I've inspired or given some areas for you to challenge about how we should rethink the world. What I will say is I think it's the most exciting time in construction for generations. I really sense the ball is rolling. There is a huge amount of people that want things to be better, and it is probably the most exciting time. I think not least, you can see from what we've achieved with BIM Show Live. We started off with 100 people. We're now up to at least 100 paid delegates. It's a huge event, and that just demonstrates over 5 years the amount of interest, passion and excitement about building a better industry. So yeah, that's an overview of what we're about, and I'm more than happy to take questions from you all. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, superb presentation. I can certainly vouch for the closing statement there as well, with regards to how far the industry has come over the last few years. Working in this from a different perspective, on a recruitment side of the business. Yeah, it's grown massively, and a lot more people are looking to get involved in the business, in the industry now, than what they were beforehand. So yeah, what I will say to people, if you do have any questions, please do put them to the box to the right hand side. However, are you fine, Rob, to spend a few minutes going through some questions that have been asked?
Yeah, please fire away. Yeah,
fantastic.
Away, yeah.
The first question is, with regards to BIM, what are the first steps in order to get BIM working in a company?
Yeah, it's quite an easy one, that, because having spoken to many companies over the years, and the various, whether we're going to talk to clients, whether it be BIM technologies about implementing that, or it's BIM store where they look at manufacturer, or space architects where clients thinking about designing a building. The fundamental, and it is quite simple. You have to have buy-in from the top of the organisation.
Sure. Yeah.
There's no point. You get some very enthusiastic people about these sorts of things, and I always say it's great and we'll support you every step of the way, but unless the people at the top of your business understand strategically what it will do for your business, you're really just pouring money down the drain.
Yeah.
So I think that the key thing is that sort of any business, the leadership of the business has to understand the value. This is not just about buying the latest software and training your people. This is about fundamentally changing your whole workflow, and you're switching from analog to digital. So unless you understand that, I would say save your money.
Sure, fantastic. Okay, question two. Do you think there is a way to make BIM cheaper, so it be used for smaller buildings as well in the future, maybe even for family housing, like you've just shown in your example?
Yeah, well again, it's not a case of making BIM cheaper. In our business, in our space architectural business, there is no 2D platform anywhere in the business, and right. Whether it's a toilet extension or a skyscraper, we would always use that tool. It's the best tool for the job.
Sure.
So I don't think, unless you can encourage the vendors of the software platform to reduce their costs, which are unlikely to.
Yeah.
But just a good example, when we first started, I would argue that it is already very, very cheap, because your turnover, you don't look at what you invest, look at what you get out of it.
Sure.
And we could get, I would probably say very comfortably, we are 3 or 4 times more efficient using this technology.
Cost over price.
Just turnover per head, our turnover per head, and how high it's gone. That's the best figure for us is, it just, even if you just go in our space architects business, the amount of turnover that a person was achieving 10 years ago to what they're achieving now is significantly different. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, that's in a market that's got tighter.
Sure.
So I think it's already very cheap. And how to reduce the cost is make people more efficient and make them use the equipment faster.
Sure. Okay. So training. How do the most known and recognised firms in BIM establish their fees?
Well, the market will do that, and I think depending where you are, you'll always face competition. We establish our fees by delivering value for customers, so we've never ever charged more for having a digital solution. If anything, we've charged less.
Well, okay.
Sometimes that's worked against us. We've lost jobs for being too cheap.
Sure.
Now, the reason we let it be fair by our clients, and if it's only going to take us, 2 weeks, we'll charge you 2 weeks.
Sure.
Whereas in the past it might take us 6 months. So that's how you do it. And what it's done for us, it's given us a competitive edge across every one of our businesses. And in a very crowded marketplace, certainly in the architectural world, it's given us an edge, and it's given us a differentiator. So I think it's an important part of the future.
Fantastic, and congratulations. Do you foresee a better way of getting engagement from the FM community, who in brackets, who in my opinion are still unaware of the power that they are likely to have in respect of the future development of BIM at the construction end?
We've got some great colleagues in FM who really do get it. That's what's great. I mean, we've got a BIM show live. What was great was we have the 4 streams running, and that's deliberate. And obviously, the stream that's always is a bit slower is the FM side, the operate and maintain side. But we've, for the last 5 years, it's always had that stream, and we see that build every year. Absolutely positive that the biggest value of all of this digital construction will be in the operational phase, and the one that will probably benefit the most is that industry.
Sure.
As quite right, it hasn't been a high tech part of the industry. If your FM hasn't been that high tech, but it's probably underfunded. It's contract based, so it's very much price based.
Yeah.
But we're seeing a change. So I think that's watch the space on that one. And there are some very bright people out there who are doing some great work already.
Sure.
On asset management and facilities management. And I think we'll see the value of that in years to come.
Fantastic. How do you foresee and or forecast your business adoption to the rapid change in technology and its inherent process change moving towards the UK BIM requirements set out by the government?
Well, we've seen it as a business opportunity, I think, from our point of view.
Yeah.
We exploit every opportunity that comes out. There's no doubt about it. I think what you have to do is, our business has been a business that's used to change and likes change and expects change. So if we stood still for too long, I say we're a disruptive business, we're a young business, we're relatively small, we're agile. That's what modern business is about.
Sure.
So what excites us and what motivates our team is us trying to find new ways and what more can we do and what's a different thing. So that's what's great, exciting. That's what young people do. The days of paying people more money just isn't a sustainable solution, and a lot of people, money is important, but there's more to it than that.
Opportunity.
So I think this gives opportunity. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Fantastic. What leads on nicely to this one? What can you see as a solution to the construction industry's resistance to the real change in both workforce, upskill, and application thereof with regards to new technologies and processes moving into the future? For example, training requirements, industry levels, industry skill levels, change management, and cost versus labour requirements at the number of levels.
Yeah, there's not one, silver bullet that's going to fix it. But as I said, when I was talking, the ball is rolling. We're tackling all of those things. Momentum is building. I think it's happening. It's just a case of speed of change. So all of those things about culture, about there is a massive momentum now behind this, and it isn't going to stop. Every area is being tackled. The training side is being tackled. The skills issues being tackled. There's a lot of work to do. We're changing a whole industry, but it is happening. It is very, very much moving. There's no doubt about it.
Fantastic. Let's move on nicely to this one. What's the greatest challenge regarding BIM in the UK compared to other countries in Europe, or throughout the world, I suppose, not just Europe? Huh?
I think the UK is in a great place. I think I'm a massive fan of what the UK government have done through the task group. We're small enough as an island to deliver a set of a common standard and a common language, and the what PAS 1192 has done was a fantastic starting point. The toolkit that's there now gives us a standard classification system. We're all talking the same language, so that gives us a massive opportunity that nobody else has. So I think we're in a great place as a country in the UK, and we can really be the pathfinder for everybody else. Sure,
I couldn't agree with you more. From our point of view, from a recruitment point of view, a lot of our clients throughout Europe and the Middle East would say, look, we're looking for guys from the UK because they really do understand what we're looking for and can help move the business forward. So I couldn't agree more. Okay, how can we? A good one for you. How can we raise carbon, cost, and value to the top of the BIM agenda?
it doesn't necessarily come to the top of the BIM agenda, but what BIM is great at, it allows those discussions not to be subjective, to be objective.
Sure.
So if you put that information in the first place, you can measure it. One of the challenges with putting carbon and performance in buildings at the moment is, how many buildings are designed that no one has a clue what that data is, or if that question's asked, it's very difficult to get the answer.
Yeah.
The beauty about BIM, if you build it correctly, and some of the things we're working on now, is that you're giving real-time answers to those questions. So,
sure.
How much does my building cost? You should be able to, and we're not far off it, of being able to give a report on your iPad, or
yeah.
what is the embedded carbon? You should be able to do that. If you put the components in,
yeah.
Through a standard approach, it makes those kind of decisions real time. The benefit of that is that you don't waste. We've got this term value engineering in the UK,
yeah.
which just means we got it wrong in the first place. Not true value engineering.
Yeah.
But we should be making the decisions, day on day, and analysing it. So it's just a fundamental difference. So I think BIM is great for that, and I think there's no doubt. We get asked more and more questions about carbon performance,
yeah.
and doing it in an analog way, very difficult questions to answer.
Sure.
Would take a long time. In the future, they'll be far more easily answered with a digital solution.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thank you. We often hear about file compatibility, or rather the preference to certain file types being used in different trades. How can we better manage these different file types, or rather, is there a more universal file type that you feel can grow to be an industry standard?
I think we'll be realistic. I don't think there's ever going to be a universal standard, but it's never a problem for us. I mean, the whole idea of BIM technologies is BIM technologies are information managers, and they work independent of design teams, and their role is they get involved in the project at the beginning, and their role is to set the standards and to maintain the standards.
Yeah.
So we class BIM technology as data police, and that's the way. So as long as everyone, you can use different file standards, as long as everyone puts the information in the same place in different file standards, no problem. So the file exchange is not an issue if the information is managed. So I would argue that actually the issue often isn't the file format, it's where the information is being put in the first place.
Yeah.
And the files will talk to each other if the information is nicely organised.
Sure.
And that comes back to that selfish thing. Well, look, I'm the engineer,
Yeah.
I put all my data in,
yeah.
and I'm the architect, I put mine in, but you haven't thought about you could share it.
Yeah.
So the beauty of what BIM technologies and information management is about taking that role, understanding the value of that role, having an independent position to the design team, and just supporting the design team and saying, look, I'll write I understand the employee's information requirements, this is what we're trying to achieve,
yeah.
here's the BIM execution plan, let's all stick to it. And the information manager is there to manage and make sure that comes out at the end. The key thing is the client has got to understand the value of that in the long term, and what we're seeing, more and more clients are valuing that. And do you know where they're seeing is they're seeing the value in operation and maintenance side. That
yeah.
The clash detection is kind of straightforward, and we're getting great results out of that. But long-term asset management is where people are seeing the value.
Yeah, no, brilliant, fantastic. One further question as well. How do you define BIM? I know this is a rather hackneyed kind of question. However, in this age of BIM PhDs, I sometimes think we're mixing up means and ends.
I think I kind of hinted at that in the things I was talking about. How do I define BIM? I've got another slide on. I've done that presentation. Basically, my answer to that is I couldn't care less. You can define it
as long as people get benefits. Huh?
What I say is, forget what. And there's a lot of people who debate about the fine words. End of the day, it's
yeah.
digital construction.
Sure.
So how to define BIM? BIM is part of digitizing the construction. It's the move from analog to digital, paper to data. That is what BIM is part of that. So we don't need to get that hung up on the exact description of what BIM is.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're digitizing our processes, and it's the best outcomes we can get from it.
Okay.
The definition of BIM, I'm not massively a detailed person, I couldn't really care. It's just my honest answer.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. No, that's superb. Thank you for going through those questions, and thank you for the presentation. How can people get in contact with you again, Rob? What's the best way to people ask you?
Through the email, rob.charlton@spacegroup.co.uk, or you can get me on Twitter at spacegrouprob. Follow me through there and DM me or follow me. And obviously happy to have discussions and debates. Obviously, there's a very good community in the UK, and we have those discussions, but we're always very keen to stretch that more internationally, because I think certainly the UK has been well ahead of its journey, and the one thing about this community, we're all very passionate and we're all very keen to share, I think, so we're happy to help others in other parts of the world if that's of any use.
No, that's fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you for presenting today. Superb. I really appreciate it. Anybody needs to get in contact with me at all, don't hesitate to send me an email, barrie@bimrec.com. With that said, if there is any questions, please fire them across now. I don't think there is. I'll give you a few more moments. No. Well, thank you, Rob. Thanks ever so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. I shall speak to you soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks now. Bye-bye. Next week, I shall send you an email in a moment with regards to next week's webinar with Joe Harris, Chair of Subsea. Thanks ever so much. Speak to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.